the audience, and then we can start having some good conversations. My name is Maria, and I lead the creative services team inside Creative Shop, not quite the whole Creative Shop team. And that's the team that does a lot of the content, a lot of the work we do with brand partners like you and others, on branded content, on content in general, and just building in the platform and building in this relationship between user and brands and creators. I will pass it to you to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Tania Nemaric, oversee brand marketing for 1-800-Flowers. I've been with 1-800-Flowers for a little over 17 years, which is forever, but I love what I do. I've held a few different positions in the organization, most recently overseeing our brand planning and go-to-market strategy for the consumer floral brand.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think we're here today to talk a little bit about brands, especially 1-800-Flowers, engaging consumers sort of beyond the transactional process, and how can we use all of the learnings you have at 1-800-Flowers to bring, like, becoming a lighthouse example in a way of other brands to follow that. So I'll just start by asking you to let us know a little bit, how have you been thinking about customer engagement, and how has that engagement influenced your personal and the brand overall marketing approach?
Sure. So 1-800-Flowers.com has always been a strong direct response brand. I mean, we're a 1-800 number and a .com in our name, but we're focused on delivering not only just a performance outcome, but also delivering on our mission, which is to help people express, connect, and celebrate. And I think this past year with COVID, it kind of kickstarted us into this evolution from beyond transactional towards becoming that engagement-based organization. And in doing so, we know we needed to change how we have a conversation with our customers. And I say a conversation with because I think it's very easy to speak to it through email and social posts. But as Mehdi from Moda Health just said, make meaningful connections, create value. So this past year, we started hosting live events on subjects that matter to our customers. So we used data that we collected on site, pages that they spend a lot of time on, content pieces that they're clicking on, reading within our blog, even the social posts that we see that have the highest engagement rates across our social partners. We wanted to lean into that. So I'll give a quick example, something that we did in the sympathy space. And it's not a topic a lot of people like to talk about, but we learned that customers are confused and they're looking for information. What do I send? What's appropriate to send? What do I say? So my friend is dealing with this incredible loss and grieving. I don't know what to do. So we leveraged a relationship that we have in the sympathy space, Rebecca Soffer, co-founder of the site Modern Loss, to host a series of episodes on Instagram and Facebook Live. We've aired 5 so far. We reached over 500,000 people, really strong engagement and participation. And for us, it's again, just going back to the customer, using the data that we're able to pull from their on-site experience, what they're searching for in the search bar, becoming that resource and a helpful part of their celebrations, expression, deepening our relationship. And across our enterprise, so I oversee consumer floral brands, but we have Harry and David, Cheryl's Cookies, Popcorn Factory. Across all of our brands, we've held a dozen virtual events this past year on a variety of topics, some expected, some unexpected topics, but we reached over 5 million people, and we plan on continuing to do this going into the next fiscal year.
You touched on something so important, right? It's like when brands are creating customer engagement or creating advertising campaigns, it's so important to know where your followers and where your consumer is, right? And I think taking those lessons from such a hard year, which was the pandemic, and a year where there was so much loss for everybody in all different levels, and use that as a moment for education on this moment in life that we all have as individuals, which will be the sympathy, and how to deal with that. It's at moments can be so much more engaging than doing a campaign that is just because you're following a moment in life that everybody's following for so long, right? Mm-hmm. So there are so many learnings in that, and it's so beautiful to see it, brands absorbing that and embracing and talking about it. I think that really says a lot about the way you are operating on this area. I'm going to use that to jumpstart to a campaign that I've seen and I love from you, which is the No Limits on Love campaign, which I would like you to talk to me and to us all a little bit about how did it start and how did it evolve? Because if I'm understanding correctly, it really goes from many different moments, which we call those, to use Pride, which is the moment we're now, right? June becomes a month that we all talk about Pride, but what do we do after? So like getting a tentpole moment and evolving with that campaign, which I think you end up talking about this idea of education and sympathy. So can you take us through that?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, I oversee our go-to-market and brand planning process. So part of that is developing the communication approach for our seasonal campaign periods. This past Valentine's Day, we took an opportunity to think outside of the box, develop a campaign that not only helps to drive engagement, but inspires those around us. So we took it upon ourselves to bring this refreshed approach of building on our promise to wow. So Valentine's Day is all about wowing them, making them feel special. It's your expression of love and passion. However, we did depart from our legacy, wow her, to a way to wow, being more inclusive, broadening the recipient profile beyond the traditional woman. And through that process, we also identified additional small but strong groups that we feel we wanted to engage with. So a few of them long distance loves. There's about 28 million people out there across the US that are in long distance relationships, LGBTQ plus relationships, Galentine's, which for those parks and recreation fans, it's now celebrated yearly by many people. And knowing how many people come to our site and interact with our brand, especially on Valentine's Day. And you just talked about COVID, there's everything going on. Everybody's distracted. We're all dealing with different emotions, grief. There's powerful things. Black Lives Matter. There's big things going on out there. And it was important and clear to us that we wanted to put out a message of love and support. And working in partnership with my creative VP, out was developed this No Limits on Love campaign. And how we developed it, we called out to our community and we asked them to join us to help put more love into the world by sharing their story of love with hashtag No Limits on Love. And from these submissions, and there were quite a few that stood out to us, we thought it was really important to help support those smaller underrepresented groups that we had previously identified. We developed videos, we amplified these videos on paid and organic social and across our owned media channels, so on site and emails through our social posts. But to your point, we didn't just stop at Valentine's Day. Then we on to the next big holiday, Mother's Day. So we kept coming back to this idea around Mother's Day that, you know, a mother's love is forever, the strength of a mom. And yeah, we could have probably taken No Limits on Love again, but we wanted to challenge ourselves. So we were thinking outside of traditional mom relationships. And just like we did for Valentine's Day, we felt that there were some underrepresented relationships and audiences that we needed to give them a platform to help express and to help them to celebrate. And as a mom, personal experience, it takes a village. And I acknowledge that there's lots of people out there who not only have their birth moms, but they have other mom figures in their life that they want to celebrate. So again, reaching out to community, asking them to share their stories, but this time under Love Makes a Family. So it's the evolution of No Limits to Love Makes a Family for Mother's Day. And we received some great stories of an impact of the mother figures in their lives. And I think that that's this video, but before we cue it up, some of them that we collected, a man who shared the support that his mother gave him when he was coming out. Children that you'll see here were speaking about the moms who adopted them and those that were raised by their aunts, their sisters, their grandmothers. And it was really amazing. So we sent them cameras, we filmed their stories. And if you want to roll the tape, here's our video.
Where do I even begin when it comes to my mom?
My grandmother took me in, but she legally adopted me.
This is a woman that never gave up.
What keeps it all together and beautiful is my wife.
I'm a poster child for it takes a village to raise a child.
My aunt has just always been there.
She is my real mom.
I call her my angel on earth.
Mom, my hero, my superhero.
To all kinds of moms, happy Mother's Day.
Love is what makes a family.
Thank you. I think you said something so important, and you can see on the spot, which is the idea of bringing it up, underrepresented relationships and audiences. Within every community, within every temple, there is one, right? And like watching the video and what you said, it makes me think like, I grew up with my grandma at first, and then with my mom, but then my mom is in Brazil, and now I have a teenage daughter who grew up with two moms, since I'm a lesbian, and every Mother's Day for her is actually explaining that she has to celebrate two moms, not one. So it's like, I think there's so much beauty on being able to hear those stories and being able to celebrate and portray them. And at times, potentially even having to defend them or use them to educate when you bump into a story with the consumer that might be a little bit of a hiccup on it, right? I want to take that to just talk to you about this progression of like using and going to the people that are your customer base, bringing the stories, and then what is the role of the creativity on transforming them from sentences that you might get or little written storytelling to those videos. So how do you work with your internal teams and with your users to get to where you are?
Sure. Well, we don't have a traditional creative agency of record. So I would say it gives us a little bit of flexibility on how we work with the different collaborators that we work with, the different makers. I think that the benefit that gives us is a lot of fresh thinking conversations that come into each of our meetings. And as we sit down and start thinking through the campaign, it's not the same conversation because we're kind of evolving it and having different points of view brought to the table, that allows us to help continue to innovate and drive harder each time we sit down. But to your point, for us, I think it's really important in being authentic in using real people, real situations, so the emotions are true. In that spot and other spots that we've had, we use real families. So the emotions that you see, it's their true selves. It's not the director going like cue tear. It's real raw emotion that you can't fake, and nor do we want to fake it. We want to bring forward those real relationships because people have these amazing stories that we feel are important to share with everybody. And I know we'll get to Pride in a little bit, but for our Pride campaign, we partnered with a poet, Britt Gambino, who's also an editor, a writing instructor, and a proud member of the LGBTQ community. And we wanted to make sure that when we approached and supported Pride Month, that we aligned with many contributors within the community, the LGBTQ community, to source content pieces, so that when we're talking about how to throw a Pride party and the role of flowers within Pride, we're using, I guess we acknowledge we're not experts in everything, and we want to use subject matter experts and people from within the community to help guide our approach and strengthen our story so that it maintains that same authenticity that we're trying to achieve with using real people.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that evolution, because I think it's like there is a clear difference or a clear evolution that even if we haven't talked about it, or if I hadn't known, I would be able to see, which is like you start with reaching out to the consumer, building stories that are real, using real people on your commercials, on the stories, your consumers, to a bigger partnership, which you now are bringing that conversation of really like walking the walk, right? So how does the Pride, how did evolution happen, and how did the conversation started internally and ended up on this bigger partnership with GLAAD and the line of products you have now that it's supporting that?
Sure. So when we started developing our Pride campaign, we thought obviously no limits, again, very easy to support and use that tagline against Pride Month. But we thought also not only to celebrate Pride Month, but to also give back. So since 2014, we've been partnering with GLAAD. And when we started, one of the other things, another using customer data points, we saw that every June, we saw a lot of searching within our search bar for Pride and Pride gifts, and kind of bridging the two, our relationship with GLAAD and customer behavior. We knew that there was an opportunity to bridge what we're seeing and what customers come to us for, gifting, and with our partnership. So we started, again, building an authentic story like we did for Mother's Day and Valentine's Day, and engaging different team members and partners to develop this collection of products and this collection of content that which we can share with our customers and with people engaging with our brand to celebrate Pride Month and support GLAAD in their mission to rewrite the script for LGBTQ acceptance. So I think it's finding where our relationships exist, marrying that with our customer data, and then making sure that we're bringing it forward to our audience and to our consumers in a real way.
Yeah, you touch on something so important, right? I think in a lot of brands, especially some there's brands where the internal team's a little smaller and can really communicate around, but that when there is a departments where the social comms or the social impact work and then the advertising, like I think there is so much to talk about the having those departments converse and inform how you're going to build your brand values or use your brand values to determine that your business strategy or your advertising strategy. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that it's, like you said, it's really important for teams to talk. I think that it's really important for having the right people at the table and having that conversation. So there's teams that you might not know are having certain conversations or certain partner alignments. And it's important that you're aware from a marketing point of view, as you're building your story for the campaign period, or as you're building your consumer facing story, how what they're doing and what they're creating can help amplify and support the story that you're trying to tell. We have a great content team that's cranking out like 10 different articles and blog posts every single month. And they're taking some of the insights that we share with them from a strategy side to build those, but then to circle back and then integrate those into the emails. So it's not just a Pride email showing a Pride collection and the alignment with GLAAD, but it's supporting it with this great content that helps tell this full rounded story. Why would a customer want to open up this Pride gift related email versus another brand X, and creating that additional value and just stickiness, I guess, and getting them to want to interact with your brand over and over and discovering new things and new ideas of inspiration.
Yeah, it's so important. So it's fair to say like that it's pretty much part of the brand DNA, and we're going to see engagements like that comes from 1-800-Flower in different tent poles and growing in the way they exist with outside partners as well, like GLAAD.
Yeah, we're definitely looking for those right alignments that make sense for our brand. We do have other areas of focus for the brand. We have a charity that we hold very near and dear called Smile Farms. It helps people with developmental disabilities find meaningful work, and with No Kid Hungry to support some of our food brand initiatives. It's very important for us to find things that are authentic and that tie into the DNA of the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that, like the consumer can see nowadays, the consumer is so smart, right? And we can see through anything. So that transparency speaks so much for the values of a brand. Tell me a little bit how, like, as you said, and as you started, you're a performance-based brand, right? And yet you have this creative and relationship-based, in a way, approach to marketing. And I think it's fair to say that this is driving a lot of success for 1-800-Flowers. How would you explain that, and what would you advise brands when it comes to being a performance brand to pay attention to that side of the business?
Yeah, we're definitely a performance brand. And I'm told that every single day when we are held to certain goals, but we do everything that we invest in market has an ROI, a CPA tied to it. And what we learned though is that it's not either or. You can be still performance focused and convey a brand message, or vice versa. You can have a strong brand message and have that same performance that you would have with the traditional DR approach. I guess the best advice I can give is to embrace always be testing mentality, because it really helps you learn into things at a much faster pace Definitely don't abandon the performance because we have the expectations from leadership on what we need to do. But as an organization, we're always challenging channels and creative to drive incremental ROI outcomes. I think for us, it was a little bit of an eye opener as we did go into these holiday periods, and we did test some of those no limits assets against our traditional DR. And there were times that right leading into a peak holiday, we saw the more, I'm going to call it brand response, had a higher outcome, and it was encouraging for us, and it gave us, I think, the confidence, and it gave leadership the confidence for us to continue to go down that path. And that's where we had that support going into Mother's Day and summer now with Pride. But I think without those little tests and demonstrating those wins, it would be hard to get that same level of support. So continuing to test and to always look for those incremental improvements against those tests. It's just what's going to help an organization really change that focus from truly DR direct response, traditional focus, to this brand response and maybe even a brand approach. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. See, I tried to mute so I can interrupt, and then that happens. The most sad sentence during COVID, isn't it? You're on mute. Thank you. I think I was saying, like, the importance of the idea of not being afraid to test, right? And working at Facebook and Instagram, it's like we know that test that is in real time, because it's not a controlled place. As long as you're having a very clear A/B learning from it, it's so fast and so easy to do it, and you don't really need to put all your media dollars. You don't need to spend that much to start getting some learnings, and it's easier to adapt to where you're going. And how incredibly important it is to dive into that creative learning test, right? Not just the more dry test of the metrics, but like how an emotional storytelling might bring something, how a real story might bring an affinity for the brand that will drive intent and that will drive purchase. Because I think of this transparency that the consumer is craving nowadays, right? Which is so incredibly important as well. I am gonna dive into some Q&As that we might have from our listeners. Okay, well, I think we talked a little bit about that, but maybe you can dive more in detail. How do you get consumer stories to input and build your own marketing strategy? And how does social platform play a role in this?
So I can give another example outside of the no limits that we've done. We have our recipient engagement program that we call Made Me Smile. So I know it's not necessarily customer engagement, but it's still our recipients as customers. So we noticed that behavior that we see when somebody gets flowers, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to take a picture, you want to put it up on Instagram, you want to tell everybody, oh my gosh, look how amazing this person is. I want to tell you this whole story. They're so beautiful. And for us, we thought that it would be important to give them a platform to do so. And we thought that that was the logical next step from this natural customer behavior. So whenever you get flowers from 1-800-Flowers, you'll see a package insert within it that encourages you to take a picture, use the hashtag #MadeMeSmile, and share your stories. And we've been blown away by how many people, again, organically just love sharing their stories, because it's a little bit of a brag moment of showing how someone loves you or how thoughtful someone is in your life. So it helps us to engage our social community, kind of create this ever evolving place to source these stories that we can then again pull into our marketing campaigns, but also product inspiration and seeing what do they do with those flowers. There've been some pictures where customers will take some of our arrangements, they can deconstruct it and make it into like place settings as they're getting ready to have their birthday dinner at home. And it's just, it's great to see how creative people can be. And again, I think as a company wanting to be, or being as much as we are, tied to customer connection, it made a lot of sense for us to continue this kind of, I'm going to call it the gifting loop, the evolution of the recipient conversation within the our marketing campaign development.
Yeah, it's so important. I'm gonna take that too because it ties into a question that came, which is, I guess I can take that one. Is like, can you talk about how technology has allowed for brands to build deeper connections? Maybe we can both take a go on that. I think it's a little bit what you said. The platforms can be so transparent, right? I'm talking about Facebook and Instagram, and allow for this great conversation between brands and the consumer, or between a creator when you are doing stories with influencers or creators, whether they are a public figure or they are a creator that has a discipline, because the open comment section, it's a great place to see those campaigns flourish and grow. And I think you build such a deeper connection, and also you can expand the connection you have when you really start talking to creators, because you're bringing out their connections into the conversation, and it becomes such a deep and important dialogue that I think oftentimes we can't really achieve on a TV commercial, or you can't really achieve on a radio spot or out of home, because you're not getting that immediate rapport and conversation with the consumer. Would you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I think exactly like what you're saying. I think it's like a built-in amplification. So with TV, it's the one-to-one, you're reaching the one person who's watching the TV, but when you start engaging communities, and especially within the social space, you're creating a moment where you're hearing from their point of view. And that's another thing that we love when we engage recipients, is that it's not us telling you how great our product is. It's Jane or Joe who got the beautiful bouquet for their birthdays, who are now telling all of their families about how amazing their birthday has been because they were surprised by this beautiful bouquet. So it's this, it's an unpaid endorsement of sorts that helps really, it presents it in a different way, and it definitely hits differently from as you're scrolling through. It's not, even though our ads do very well on Instagram and Facebook, I think by having that also individual engagement campaign kind of running in the background just reinforces everything that we do from a paid side. But I definitely will agree also with your points on the technology. I mean, obviously, look, we're doing a conference on Zoom, so being able to leverage the tools that we have, I think COVID jump-started everything for a lot of different companies, and we would not have been able to have had the live event success that we've had unless our technology partners advanced as much as they have these past few months to allow people to get onto a conference, raise their hands, ask questions, interact. We love the Facebook Live tools that they have available to us to understand how many people have engaged, and then have latent engagement once the event has aired, but then they came back or it was shared, to be able to learn a little bit more about kind of the long-term value to some of our events that we have. So maybe only, I don't know, 100,000 were able to attend it live, but then we saw 500,000 were able to download, and they shared it with others that we saw 2 weeks later, further engagement.
It's so interesting what you're saying, because you're also touching on the point of organic and paid, right? And I think some of those tools, while they can be organic, there is so much that you can do. Like you're saying, on a live, you could even, as a company, be repurposing parts of the live, right? And resurfacing to people according to the engagement there, and start this more extended conversation with your consumer base on a post live. And I'm like now very, very excited with the messenger rooms, where we can go and have conversations with a slew of people at the same time. And whether it's educational, like the campaigns you're saying you were doing, or like whether it's a marketing one, it's so incredible how the tools really got it a huge boost by the sheer force that we had to be all separated. I have one more question for you before we started to wrap up from the audience. Being a performance business, can you discuss a little more the strategy of building brand versus building DR, and how they collapse in one strategy, or when they can't collapse, if that's the case?
Yeah, I think, like I said before, it needs to be a balance. Even within the DR community, I think a lot of agencies have been changing their mindset. It's not just DR, it's not direct response, it's brand response. And I think we all acknowledge that you can continue to drive efficient outcomes if you keep down the direct response path, but at a certain point it will level off. So it's important that you continue to evolve your message, evolve your brand, build brand love, inspire those connections, inspire people to want to continue to come back to your brand, even when unprompted, because I guess the like you just talked about, organic and paid, ideally we won't have to pay. That there is this approach where people are engaging more authentically with this organic things, the organic content that we're pushing out, or the live events that we have going on. So I think that it is an evolution. And I think that it's something that we're all trying to figure out what the right balance, and there's no, I think, right balance for any brand, but as we test and learn into it, there's a role for both of them to coexist. It's not, again, either or. It's the coexisting of a brand response, direct response, and branding.
Yeah. Can you give us a little bit of a peek on where you're going maybe with next 10 polls or
Yeah, so coming up next, I'm looking at the calendars, thinking through what's going to round out the year. So we have some great news stories that I can't yet reveal, but we have coming out at the end of the summer, and then we start getting back into fall occasions, into holidays. Holidays a big time for the food brands that we have within our portfolio. So it's going to be important for us to really think through how we can approach holiday in a unique way that helps us break through, and instead of all those electronics that get all the spotlight during the holidays, that there's also still an opportunity for us to reinforce the human connection. I mean, I think we all realize also coming out of COVID that there's something really special about getting together again and being with people. And I think that as a brand and as an enterprise, we noticed that in our customer behavior, that people really turn to us when they couldn't be there in person, and that we want to continue that relationship and help them with their ongoing expressions through the balance of the year.
Yeah, I think you have such it's an interesting position to be in a brand like yours, right? Which is about what you're selling is a representation of love or care or intent to be with somebody. And I think, as we are evolving out of the lockdown type of days and having vaccination and being able to meet people, like, I still think that is going to be such an up and down, right? There will be moments where we might not. So establishing that emotional connection through a gesture, through a gift, it's so important. So I'm excited to be watching where you go, because I think there will be a big space to play and evolve and change, right? For you and the brand as you go.
Yeah, I think that we kind of established these weird behaviors throughout COVID. And I think that these little random acts of gifting became one of that behavior. At least for me, I was randomly sending people. I mean, we joke, there's coworkers that I've worked with now for 6 months that I've never met in person. And we've been connecting and reaching out, and family members that you send gifts to. And I think that that's something that I would like to personally keep up with. And I think that it helped us to also somewhat develop a little bit a deeper connection and deeper relationships, because we were forced to somewhat overcompensate from this lack of human connection, being in the same room. So I look forward to it, and I look forward to seeing how customers continue to be more thoughtful and to be more kind to each other.
Yeah, me too. And I really hope that brands start following this path and seeing the importance of like creativity and brand awareness and brand love within the performance brands and even the world of the art, even if it's not a performance brand, because I think it's all about that connection, right? To keep your customer base. I'm gonna do a very quick lightning round with you if you're up for that.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Roses or daisies?
Oh, roses.
Chocolate covered strawberries or chocolate covered pretzels?
Oh, both.
Both it is. Facebook or Instagram?
Oh, that's tough. I'm gonna say Instagram. I like the pictures, and I'm seeing more picture sharing and more picture love out of Instagram. So I'll go Instagram.
More of a visual world, I guess.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we're all humans divided a little bit of more like the visual world versus not. And then I'll give you another one, potted plants or bouquets?
You will never find a potted plant in my house because I do not have the green thumb, so I will go with bouquets all day.
So I guess that goes with the marketing.
Yes,
Right.
no, it's definitely, I think that there's also something to be said. I mean, obviously plants are having a moment right now. I wish I was a plant mom, but I cannot make any of my succulents stick. So I'll probably have to check out our site and figure out what I'm doing wrong, but bouquets all day. Yep.
I'm like, I almost can't keep the bouquets alive long enough, and I have lots of plants, so maybe one day we can share some strategies about that.
Hey, and more reason to have, I'll sign you up for a subscription. I'll get you bouquets every month. You'll be all set.
That sounds lovely. Well, Tania, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
And chatting with us. And I think this has been so great. And I can't wait to see what's coming for holiday.
Yeah, we look forward to sharing it with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, you guys. That was really great. Really appreciate you guys having that conversation.